For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans for a hope and a future for you. That's a version of Jeremiah 29:11. It's a passage of Scripture that I believe I've heard quoted many, many times from many different people in many different circumstances. And I think there's a reason why that passage of Scripture resonates within us so much. We hear that and we want to believe, yes, there is a God who is in control, who does have a plan for me. And yet the context of that particular verse is actually so much bigger than me as an individual or you as an individual. It's about God's family, his people, and the work that God is doing of revealing himself to the world. You see, we have this unchanging God who is ever revealing, and the story of the Bible is God's story. From Genesis to Revelation, God is telling his story, and his story is about a God who created people to be in relationship with him. And God's methodology for bringing people into a relationship with him is family. He creates a people for himself in the Israelites. He promised Abraham that Abraham would have descendants and that those descendants would outnumber the stars in the sky and the sand in the shores. And Abraham had a son. And God was making a people for himself. And then the Israelite people, they were enslaved in captivity in Egypt. And Moses comes. God sends Moses as a deliverer to deliver them from captivity, to give them a land, a promised land. But there was 40 years in the wilderness. And the people who left Egypt, almost none of them saw the promised land. And in Jeremiah 29:11, God says, yes, I have a plan for you. I have a plan for you. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. But here's the deal. The you that he's talking about there is actually plural. It means his people, his family. The very people that he was talking to there were in exile. They were going to be exiled. And what God tells them to do is he tells them, okay, where you are, I want you to thrive where you are. It's not the future and the hope that you thought you would have. It's not what you were planning. It's not what you dreamed about. It's not really even about you. It's about God and his people and his kingdom and his story. And so when he says you, he's saying, okay, all of you, collectively, my people. He says, I do, yeah, I have you, and I have a wonderful plan. But here's the deal. It may not be what you, as an individual, would want to sign up for. They were going to be exiles, and they were going to remain in captivity and be exiled for quite some time. And in fact, God says, okay, go there, prosper, and do well, and build and plant. And he says, have children and grandchildren, because they weren't going to be brought back from exile. The very people that were hearing this the first time weren't going to experience that. And so here's the truth. Whatever we're experiencing in this life, there's all kinds of trouble and hardship and difficulty. But if we really believe that what God says in Jeremiah 29:11 is true, he's up to something so much greater than me as an individual or you as an individual. He's up to building his kingdom and his family. And so whatever you're going through, whatever you're facing, whatever the difficulties and trials and hardships are, it's okay. God is with us, and God is moving, and God is working, and he has a plan for us. And us just means his people, his family. And there is a future, and there is a hope that will never disappoint. So when we quote that passage of Scripture, let's remember, things may not go the way I want them to, but God's got a plan. And what a wonderful thing it is to get to be a part of that plan with him. Let's go, church.